Hi, I'm Kalila Reynolds and welcome to Taking Stock. We're bringing you all the latest business news and telling you how they will affect you and your money. Come on, let's get this money. First up, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy is seeking to raise $22 million on the heels of opening up their new solar energy plant in Westmoreland. Can they do it, given that they didn't meet their IPO target of $50 million last year? And later, the analysts weigh in on the latest stock market developments. Why is the market in a slump these days? And what do they think about Mailpac's upcoming IPO? But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. The Jamaican dollar hit another record low last week, passing the 140 to 1 US dollar mark for the first time in history. It closed on Friday at an average $140.42. Speaking at a JMMB breakfast forum last week, Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Biles urged Jamaicans to treat the price change just like any other commodity. He's also encouraging large institutions to make their orders for U.S. dollars well in advance, as he says the system has been straining under heavy demand. 3 more companies announced plans for IPOs last week. Carrie Robinson's e-commerce and shipping company Mailpac, Marathon Insurance Brokers, which specializes in car insurance and is chaired by Richard Berger, and Ajas Aviation, chaired by Howard Mitchell. Exports from Latin America and the Caribbean are expected to fall by 2% by the time the year is out. That's according to a report released by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, last week. ECLAC says the decline is caused by global trade tensions, lower demand, and disruptions from new technologies, among other things. NCB and USAID have signed an agreement to provide over $3 billion in financing for small and medium businesses. The funding will be available to Caribbean SMEs to finance energy-saving and clean energy projects, as well as other areas such as small-scale irrigation systems and general business expansion. What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. And when we come back, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy needs more money to fund more renewable energy projects across the region. Will they get it? We're taking stock with Managing Director David Delaire. This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent, insurance made easy. Welcome back to Taking Stock. Less than a year after listing on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy is coming to the market again. They're seeking to raise nearly $23 million in an upcoming rights issue. That's over 3 billion Jamaican dollars. The offer price is $1 a share, or 140 Jamaican dollars. So they'll be offering 23 million new Class B shares to shareholders on record as of November 8. Shareholders can buy 2 new Class B shares for every share that you already have. If you want to understand how rights issues work, check out my Money Mondays JA video, What is a Rights Issue? I recently had the opportunity to speak with MPC Caribbean Clean Energy's Managing Director, David Delaire. He's originally from the Eastern Caribbean, but now based in Germany with the parent company. And he was here last month for the commissioning of Paradise Park in Westmoreland. All right, welcome back to Jamaica, David.
Thank you.
How has it been going?
It's been going pretty well, except for the heavy rains that we've been having. I've been enjoying my stay in Jamaica.
Yeah. So the last time you were here, it was because of the commissioning of the Paradise Park plant in Westmoreland. So how was that?
Well, the thing about the Paradise Park commissioning and subsequent operation is that it marks a significant milestone for Jamaica and also in the English-speaking Caribbean, because it's the largest solar park in the Caribbean, and this means that the Caribbean has begun to embrace renewable energies. And so, as we often know about the Caribbean, is that we need a leader, someone to take the first giant step for the Caribbean and not necessarily for mankind. So most of the time in the Caribbean, it's always Jamaica, as the rest of the English-speaking Caribbean in the international competition normally cheers Jamaica on. Well, in the investment world and in the renewable space, we think that Jamaica is a leader and is in the forefront of the rest of the region.
You'd think it would be a no-brainer, right, to bring solar energy to the Caribbean, that people here would just naturally embrace it. Have you found that there have been challenges in getting those projects off the ground?
Well, what's interesting is that you find that people come from outside, like Europe and the colder parts of the US, to the Caribbean for sun. Now, those regions have more solar powered energy than we do here in the region, because they realize that having the energy from the sun is much more economical and ecological for their parts of the world than having fossil fuel. So for us, I think that we can learn from our guests that we host during the summer and winter months who are here for vacation and embrace renewable energies. We're embracing it here in the region, but I think it will take a bit longer because of, change takes time. But I think the process has already started. And that being said, that we've been here for the last 2.5 years, introducing ourselves as a company, introducing renewables as the preferred form of energy, and introducing the investment vehicle that we have here as something that can give you steady cash flow, as well as give you a carbon footprint reduction, if you will, as an investor and as a region.
But because the challenge with solar in particular is that traditionally it's been very expensive, and the storage costs the storage is another issue as well. So I was very impressed when I saw this project come on stream at the cheapest source of energy to JPS in Jamaica, 8.5 US cents per kilowatt hour. So are those costs coming down even more?
Well,
can we expect even cheaper energy from MPC?
I can tell you this much, that because the technology is advancing so fast and the economies of scale is also important, we find that the competition is causing price to be optimized, meaning that the efficiency of the panels are increasing. So this means that you need less panels. When you need less panels, you need less space, less land that you have to rent or buy. And so you require overall a lower capex to implement projects. So if we were to start with Paradise Park today, as you know, it cost us $65 million to realize that project. I believe that we could at least get a 10 to 15% reduction in the cost of constructing that project. Wow.
So tell me about how you were actually able to bring Paradise Park 8 Rivers to fruition, because you went to market in December, the IPO.
Yes.
You're seeking 50 million US dollars. You got 11 million US. I'm sure that had to have been disappointing, and it left you with a gap.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Well, yes, we would have liked to have received the 50 million, but the 11 million that we received showed us that there is interest. Maybe not as much interest as we thought it would be, but it would have been more disappointing if we didn't raise any money. It would have shown that renewable energy doesn't have any place in the investment space in Jamaica. Now we know that, and just recently we have paid our dividends, so we're proving to the investors that renewable energy has a place, for one, because you've invested in it. Thank you. Two, we're repaying you the dividends as we promised. So I understand that the investors in the region are more accustomed to higher dividend returns, like closer to the 20s and mid-20s, but renewable energy is not like that. You invest in it, and you get benefits of your return and your long-term cash flow, and you're also contributing to the overall, ecological benefits that we need in the Caribbean, because as it gets hotter, there's more storm, it's affecting us locally here. That's one of the points that we think we have to keep making over and over again, that, yes, renewable energy doesn't pay you that 20% investment, But yes, it does pay you that steady cash flow around 8 to 12% on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm. So was that the reason? Well, you have a rights issue coming up. I've heard that there was supposed to be a meeting in September to approve whether or not to go forward with the rights issue. Is that the reason that you dangle this early dividend in front of shareholders?
That's a very pointed question. The reason why we did it is because annually we can pay dividends based on the structure of the Costa Rican asset. We are allowed to take dividends once a year if there's enough reserve left and to cover the operations of the asset. The reason why I'm talking about the Costa Rican asset is because it was the only asset in the fund that was at a point mature enough where it could pay dividends. So we're keeping in practice as was with the asset before we acquired it. And since the asset performed so well, about 11% above what we forecasted, we decided to pass it on to the shareholders, just like we said we would. Mm-hmm. In our coming to the market in December and January, we forecasted that we would be able to pay some dividends. I think we were able to pay a bit more than we thought we'd be able to pay, and so this is good for the investors. We have a fund where we are not allowed to keep any of the equity in it. So every time we accumulate an amount that's a certain percentage above the operating budget, we have to disperse it. Mm-hmm. So this is something that we'll be doing at least once a year, and it depends on the different situation. Maybe you could get a second one maybe 6 months after, maybe 9 months after. So, but we're not accumulating cash in the fund. We're repaying the dividends, and we're acquiring new assets on behalf of the fund. So to answer your question, we're sticking with the practice of the asset of dispersal.
So coming back to my original question mm-hmm. about how you were able to meet that funding gap between mm-hmm. the amount you raised mm-hmm. in the IPO December, January, right. and being able to actually bring Paradise Park to completion. So mm-hmm. how were you able to accomplish that?
Paradise Park is equity and debt. We got 45 million of funding from Proparco and FMO, and the rest of the equity came from the three partners involved in the asset. So Neoen, a French global IPP, Angela Rainford, who is the original developer of the project, and us. So our share was 6 million, and then the rest of the total equity was about 15 million that was needed. So everyone had to contribute their portion of the equity. And we were in a position to do it because for our portion, we, as the sponsor of the fund, we gave a 5 million GP commitment to the fund.
So you had to get more debt than you had initially anticipated.
Actually, no. We got the exact amount of debt that we wanted. The 50 million that we were trying to raise, it was pure equity, and that was to build up the fund, if you will, because we had a pipeline. We still have a pipeline of projects that we wanted to invest in. There are projects in Domrep that we wanted to acquire, projects in El Salvador. One of them we acquired. We wanted to acquire a bit more. There are projects in St. Lucia that we were thinking about. So we had identified a value amount of 50 million that if we raise the equity of 50 million, we'd be able to acquire all of these projects.
Are you concerned, though, that the appetite is still lukewarm for renewable energy in the Caribbean, especially since you'll be coming to market with a rights offer when there's so much other competition out there for people's money?
Well, I think there's always competition for people's money, for people's time. And what we have to do is to make our case solid and to keep advertising and keep promoting the benefits of renewable energy, the benefits of investing in renewable energy. So competition-wise, it doesn't concern me. I just have a non-compete clause, if you will, where I don't compete with other people. I compete with myself to do the best that we can, to be relentless in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Well, all the best when it comes, David.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And when we come back, I've got your market recap, and the analysts are standing by. This segment of Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent. Insurance made easy. The market saw strong improvements in performance for the week ending Friday, November 1, as 83 stocks traded, with 47 advancing, 29 declining, and 7 trading firm. Wigton Wind Farm saw massive trading, taking up more than half of market volume last week, with people buying and selling 120 million ordinary shares in the renewable energy company. The stock gained 3 cents to close the week at 97 cents. Derrimon trading also saw significant activity. 31 million Derrimon shares traded, representing 13% of market volume. Share prices are up 11% to $2.50. And Sagicor Select Fund was third among the volume leaders, with 21 million units changing hands. However, share prices remained unmoved at $1.15. Turning to the top advancers, several companies saw significant gains this week, with 9 companies seeing double-digit improvements in share price, led by MPC Caribbean Clean Energy, whose share price jumped 30% this week following the announcement of an upcoming rights issue. The company closed the week at $260, its strongest performance since listing in January. SSL Venture Capital saw another week of gains, its share price jumping 24% to close the week at $1.62. And Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances gained 23%, closing at $14.75 a share. On the losing side now, Epley took the biggest price hit last week, losing 14% of its value, closing Friday at $14.50. Sterling Investments US dollar ordinary shares lost 11%, closing at 2 US cents, and Honeybun was down 7%, closing at $6.33. This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Proven Wealth, Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and NCB Capital Markets. Welcome back to Taking Stock. I've got a team of analysts to examine the week in business. We're joined by Devroy Davis. He's a stock market analyst and co-founder of Caribbean Value Investor. And Greg Lindo. He's Assistant General Manager for Treasury and Trading at JMMB. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Kalila.
Good to have you on and good to have you back.
Thank
Devroy,
you. Yes, it's always a pleasure.
Becoming a regular contributor now.
I am honored, honestly.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Well, let's start with market happenings for this week. Anything stood out for you?
Okay, for me, this week was very interesting. For one, I started to observe a rebound in kind of just market activity. We saw more stocks closing higher. We saw more volumes trading. I think on October 28th, we actually saw a very significant volume in Wisynco trading, around 10 million plus shares. So that was very interesting. And then fast forward, closing out the week, we actually got the earnings report, and we saw where there were actually record revenues.
Yes, they had solid performance.
Yes, indeed. And this is actually, I think, coming from this would be the first quarter where we're seeing the partnership with the the Jamaica producers, that initiative being inculcated into the earnings report for Wisynco.
Profit was up, I think it's 30%?
Close to
34%?
34%, yeah. Right. And even gross and both growth and net profit, we're actually seeing positive returns. Even earnings again grew some 26% or something like that. But aside from that, the other thing that actually caught my attention was MPC Clean Energy. We've seen where they're coming to market to raise additional funds.
Rights issues coming up.
Right, but on top of that, we're seeing where the stock in and of itself is performing really well. They actually reached an all-time high in the week closing, the stock went up as high as, I think, $240.
Wow.
And if you look over a 52-week range, I think the lowest it traded was 126. So that's a really impressive gain, and most of that would have occurred within this quarter.
That's interesting. I definitely want to come back to that point because our first guest was Mr. Davis from MPC Caribbean Clean Energy. But Greg, anything stood out for you this week?
Yes, so last week's trading, Wigton continues to be one of the most heavily traded stocks on the market, which really has been the case since it has listed. I think the earnings reports that we've seen...
Well, with 30,000 shareholders.
Right. So the earnings reports that have come out have been interesting. As Trevor White said, Wisynco really doing pretty well in that report. Also seeing earnings from Lasco Manufacturing and Carib Cement also, which, you know, Lasco Manufacturing, a little bit weak on the top line, but efficiency, they were able to grow their net profitability. Carib Cement, you know, a company that persons tend to really closely associate to what's happening in the construction sector, having a fairly weak quarter, but year to date still showing signs of growth in profitability. However, you know, top line revenue that appears to be relatively flat, which comes into question if we're seeing a lot of development. Why is the number not larger? So those are the most significant things for me for last week.
Okay, so let's come back to the MPC Caribbean Clean Energy point then, because David Delaire, I said Mr. Davis earlier, David Delaire was on earlier, and one of the things that we were discussing is that the market has seemed to be kind of tepid on MPC Caribbean Clean Energy since they listed. The share price remains pretty much unchanged for the past year, minor gains and losses here and there. So why do you think there's a sudden interest in people wanting more MPC when they didn't even make their full IPO target when they were when they were listing?
Okay, I think there are a few considerations that one probably took into in thought when we talk about MPC Clean Energy. For one, they were a fairly new company when they listed. They were actually raising funds for the development of their wind projects, exactly, and also the Paradise Park. Now, the thing about MPC Clean Energy is that while it is raising funds both here and in Trinidad, the company operates Caribbean-wide, and so I think it actually has really good prospects going forward. I'll make a comparison between the MPC Clean Energy and Wigton. The comparison being that Wigton, which actually started in 2004, would have had its first phase basically coming to their end of life, looking probably after 20 years, then let's call it that, right? Whereas MPC's operations are going to be fairly new operations. They had basically they have more capacity to generate new projects and to generate new interest, and I think that's really what's happening with them, and that's what accounting for persons now being more interested in the company. They're also a bit more high profile now, I would think.
You'd think, now that they've actually opened the park in Westmoreland, there's
I think
something physical to show. Yeah,
that's a significant development from a market perspective, because sometimes when these new companies that come out, that there's not that familiarization.
Right.
Once you see something that is tangible associated with it, it does bring some amount of confidence
and credibility
to the projects that.
But they're a global company, though. They're just new to the region or new to Jamaica, but they have other projects around the world. I want to talk about Mailpac, as there's a lot of interest in Mailpac now. They've announced that they have plans to list as well. What are your thoughts on a coming Mailpac IPO, Greg?
I think that Mailpac is coming at an opportune time. I mean, the markets, or the capital markets, I could say, have been very receptive to IPOs. Mailpac is a brand that is known publicly, and they're operating in the e-commerce space, which, e-commerce is changing the world. E-commerce is causing a lot of brick and mortar states worldwide to shut down stores, right? Because everybody is gravitating towards the Amazon and Alibaba to do their shopping. So it is a time for them to look at growth, as they can use this capital now to expand and grow their business. So I think that it's, it has potential. I mean, we won't know until we really see the prospectus to see exactly the details. But from a high level, the economic activity justifies, or the economic conditions, I should say, will justify persons having more income to go and spend disposable income, and Mailpac is going to position themselves to take advantage of that.
But there's so much competition in the space, the Devroid. Every time I turn around, there's a new shipping company opening up left, right, and center. So what about the competitive side of things?
Okay, so my initial thought on the whole Mailpac situation is, yes, it is indeed opportunistic, and from the reports that came out, their intention for this IPO is to actually repay their parent company a part of the investment that was made. Norbrook Equity, being their parent company, had made a significant investment, and that's actually a visual investment. You can actually see where there are now more Mailpac vehicles moving around the Kingston area. At least I've observed it. In terms of the competition, most of them, I would say, are smaller entities that are looking to enter the space, because, again, some of the reasons that Greg mentioned, there is more activity within the space. There is also, again, more lower employment, meaning persons are finding themselves with more disposable income.
Lower unemployment.
Lower unemployment. In terms of the competition, though, historically, Mailpac has not been one to shy away from competition. They actually have an appetite for acquisition. So I would be looking out for them actually trying to make some acquisitions within that time.
I think so too.
Yes, there's definitely room for consolidation in the space. And doing this IPO, yes, they're going to raise some capital for themselves as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see further consolidation, maybe a few of the smaller players being bought out, or just a general expansion. I mean, they do have, as they claim, 50,000 clients, and maybe they can use this capital to build upon their current platform.
Before we go, guys, I want to ask you about the impact of the dollar, if any. As you all know, the Jamaican dollar slid to its weakest point last week. It crossed the 140 to 1 US mark, and there's been some level of reaction to that. Are the markets reacting? Let's start with you, Greg.
I don't think we're seeing a general market reaction just now. I mean, I know crossing 140 is somewhat of a psychological barrier to a lot of investors. But in recent times, we have seen two-way volatility in the currency. We've seen periods where it has devalued, and we've seen periods where it has revalued. The major, I'd say, trigger point for me is, in terms of confidence, or investor confidence, is that we have a very strong NIR. The central bank has remained committed to an orderly rate of depreciation, and they have ammunition to come in to defend the dollar if needs, because they have intervened in recent times. So whereas it may have an impact on some company earnings or the net foreign exchange earners when they actually report their earnings, I don't think we've seen that impact just yet on the market. So maybe down the line we may.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same observation. As I said, even though we had the situation of the dollar crossing 140, we've seen a rebound in the markets and rebound in market activity. So I'm not certain that the general investing public is that much concerned about the current state of the dollar. Another thing, and Greg alluded to this, is that the current administration has sort of been on this drive to educate persons in terms of the two-way volatility of the dollar. And the minister has actually been on record saying that we should expect to see this two-way volatility, and that it is actually normal in a efficiently operating market. So I think that's not a prime area of concern.
Okay, wait till it reach 150.
Psychologically, I think there will be some response.
Yeah, there will be quite the reaction, I think, if that was to happen. Thanks for joining us, Devroid Davis. Check him out, Caribbean Value Investor, all over social media, and Greg Lindo, JMMB. Taking Stock, the Analysts was brought to you by Proven Wealth. Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and NCB Capital Markets. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and check out my other features, Money Mondays JA, Money Moves JA, and What's in It for Me. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Kalila Ray. On Money Mondays this week, you can get my take on the Mailpac IPO based on what we know so far. Tell a friend about taking stock. Investing is the new sexy. So let's make it cool to talk about money.